So let me
Okay.
just say that
Introduce
the, I don't, this is the typical, these folks need no introduction tonight. Because
Yeah.
I think that's quite true. The object here tonight is to discuss some of the problems we've had due to COVID and how that has impacted our various ministry teams. And maybe share some ideas or at least give some advice to each other or an opinion or whatever about what ways can be done to improve situations due to COVID. Okay, so with that, we were going to start with Monty talking about worship and how that's been affected.
Well, thank you, Ken. I think some of this information will be a repeat for several on this call. And I think if there's anything that we're all experienced in, it's the worship that is that you've all been able to participate. We're on one end of the production line, and you guys are on the reception line. Um, we certainly did have a mad dash to scramble to figure out how to do worship online. It was this March 15th, I think, was the first time I'd ever used Facebook Live. I would just during the regular. It was one of our last services that we had in the sanctuary. I just put my iPhone on a tripod up in the balcony and I pressed record and walked away, and we did the service, and we ended up publishing that service, and remarkably people could hear a little bit about what was going on. But that was the extent of my knowledge just those like 7 months ago. So we've learned a lot since then. Obviously on a Zoom platform primarily. And again, I just hesitate not to repeat a bunch of stuff you already know. We really helped a lot by my son Sam and some of his friends, an audio technician who figured out how to solve the problem on Zoom around audio. Notice that when we say the prayer, the Lord's Prayer together, how it all just sounds cacophonous because there's a delay between all the different speakers coming through Zoom. And that was happening in the sanctuary when you would have a reader and you'd have somebody in the balcony and you'd have all the different speakers from their different devices trying to sync up. We figured out, though, that we could have all those speakers use the sound system at Immanuel and then a cord coming out of the headphone jack so that they're all one, it goes into one device. It's all one computer, basically, that's initiating the music or the speaking, and that syncs it all up for us. Of course, you have to have the headphone jack in only halfway. And lots of details about the placement of the microphones and how to keep that wind sound from cropping up and dominating. So all those things were part of the learning curve, as well as how to do PowerPoints. I know when we first started Zoom, we talked to Brad about doing PowerPoint, and he's like, PowerPoint? And thankfully, his wife Rachel, as a school teacher, had some experience with it. But it's been going relatively smoothly. So now we have most people join us on Zoom, but about another third or so join us regularly each week on Facebook Live. That's their preferred venue. And then some in the middle of the week on YouTube. So that's another new thing for us, is our YouTube channel. Last month there was 10.5 hours of viewing of just people from around the planet watching content from Immanuel, whether it be our worship, whether it be Bible studies, whether it be forums like this, or small activity with small or young children that Pastor Emily has been doing. And we just recently did a survey which had 40, we collected 40 surveys, which represented 74 people, because each of surveys had sometimes more than one person in the household. And 30% of those, 50% of those that responded identified people who were at risk for COVID in their households. So 37, I think, were people amongst our congregation were at risk due to some age category or health category. So we did not get a sense that people were overly eager to return to in-person worship on Sundays. In fact, if anything, people seem to be cautious about that. Are also in consultation with the staff and reading the news and watching the COVID dashboards prepared by the city and looking at our zip code, seeing that the trend is going back up. We proposed to council on Tuesday night this week to delay a decision to meet in person for worship to be no sooner than February 1st of 2021. So just before Ash Wednesday, about a week before then, we'll ask the question again. But for now, we're going to move forward with online worship, and we're as a staff just starting to brainstorm about ways to gather in kind of to have fun, to just be able to interact as a community, whether it be for walks or fires in the courtyard and singing or playing games online. We're also looking at having some sort of shared Christian Christmas Eve service with Unity Lutheran this year. So trying to make lemonade, as they say, from a sour situation. I want to let there be some questions though. I mean, we could kind of go deeper into any one of these topics I just mentioned, including some of the details about a replacement to our sound system, which I think many of you know that the sound system for some years has been, I could rehearse for you all the reasons why it's about to be kaput, and we are very fortunate it hasn't died before this. But beyond that, beyond just preventative maintenance that needs to happen, we have a strategic opportunity, we think, to continue with online streaming of worship and other faith-forming content to reach to community beyond Edgewater and into other states, and even we've got some people that check in Europe and some in Africa. So, which is really interesting to kind of click and see just who's watching where and when. It's a little bit like that magic mirror when I was a kid, you know, that you know.
I know,
I
Robert.
see Richard and Ken and Donna. Not quite. We don't.
You
It's not
come
that
here,
specific. Yeah.
So, I mean, speaking for myself, I think probably quite a few others too, though, I would really like to see us continue with a online presence from our And I just look at it from our own experience, Donna's and my experience, is because we're out of town. In normal times, okay, if we ever get back to normal times, in normal times, we travel quite a bit, as you know, and we go visit the grandkids a lot and all those types of things. And I calculate we're gone from the church about half the time on Sunday mornings, it seems. And it would be a real advantage for us to be able to connect from, if we're down in Indiana or even if we're over in Europe,
Yeah.
to connect,
Yeah.
so I'd really look forward to that. And so my vote for whatever it counts is to try to continue this type of thing as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree, because there's a lot of older people who would still benefit from being online. People that they're worried about getting sick, they're worried about having to travel again, and
Yeah, I used to carry audio tapes, cassette tapes of services to shut-ins or if people were out of town. So this would be a much updated version of that.
Let me just ask for the rest of the folks here, are there questions or comments or suggestions or things you'd like to see? And maybe this is the talking to the converted here.
Richard or David would be probably the only ones that haven't weighed in some other way.
Well, I don't know if this is, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
I don't know if this is the time to bring this up, but I know that there are a lot of discussions in all churches, but particularly within the Lutheran tradition, about how we can have distributed communion or distributed Eucharist. And I've heard that people are talking about it, but I don't know exactly where we stand on that right now. Maybe Brad has some more information on that.
Yeah, it's been a very lengthy conversation, not just amongst between Brad and myself, but also with our staff and involving colleagues and really across the whole ELCA and many denominations and different theologians weighing in. But you were about to ask a question about it.
Well, I'm just wondering where we stand in the discussion at that point. And I know we do have the Wednesday opportunities. That's probably not fitting the needs of some people who feel much more restricted in their travel. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a painful thing that basically most of my career we have worked very hard to move Lutheran assemblies from irregular communion, a couple times a year, to weekly communion, and now to be at a place where we're at service of the word every week. And there are some churches, and I believe Unity Lutheran is one of them, that is doing a mass with the idea that those assembled online are a community gathered in Christ.
Yeah.
And so people are encouraged and trained up a little bit to get some bread or wine, and they share communion that way. By and large, I would say most Lutheran congregations, at least the ones that I know, and maybe Chicago's a little different, are not going down that path.
Yeah.
We could talk more specifically about what some of the concerns are there, but by and large, most congregations I'm aware of are doing, at least ELCA congregations are doing what we are, which is service of the word, and then different ways to distribute communion. So if you have a parking lot, I've seen that. That's kind of cool. They do a parking lot distribution. Some that you drive by and you pick up the host, and there's prepackaged hosts and wine. I think Ebenezer has a kind of a brief devotional service, and then people can take up a brown paper bag and they take one home or take one to a neighbor. Um, and of course, we have the Wednesday Eucharist. So it provides at least some way for us to gather uh, in the in, around the table.
Well, if
yeah.
I might jump in, our conversations have been evolving because as you'll listen to my remarks that I prepared to read, because I'm much better scripted than off the cuff. But, you know, originally we thought, okay, this is going to be the next few weeks. Okay, maybe it's going to be a month. Okay, well, maybe in a couple of months. So our planning has been sort of rapid and evolving and changing. And the original discussion with the worship team and with staff about our communion practice centered around who would be excluded from observing the Eucharist, for celebrating the Eucharist, and is it ethical for us spiritually to celebrate it at all if everyone can't participate? So the idea, I think that the midweek Eucharist services began, I think, as sort of a transition into what we hoped would be a larger opening for more people. And it looks like we're going in the opposite direction slightly now with the cases of COVID just sort of surging. So perhaps we should discuss this matter about, should we be celebrating the Eucharist at all if everyone can't participate? That's a whole can of worms too, isn't it? I mean, if we make the commitment to celebrate the Eucharist and distribute it in a way that is grounded in our theological practice, that becomes quite difficult for Pastor Monty or Emily or whoever is consecrating the elements and then getting them to everyone. And what if we leave someone out by accident, or they don't feel that it's sanitary, that they could receive the elements and them not get sick? This becomes exclusive again. So it's a challenging topic. And I'm glad that we are not doing online Eucharist. I think that that's not a part of our practice. I think it's a response. It's a natural response, an inclination for us to yearn for that gift. But I'm not convinced that it's the most. It's not the best practice as far as I'm concerned, and that is what the bishop has suggested, Bishop Eaton. But we have our own polity. We can do whatever we want basically, but we're going to do it with informed opinions and study, and that's kind of where we are right now. But the conversation, as far as I understand it, is sort of open.
Yeah. I hope I don't bore you with this, but I want to share a little historical trivia. In 1964, if you can remember back that far, I was on the planning committee for the National Youth Gathering in Detroit. And we had 13,000 kids and adults. And somebody came up with the idea that why don't we have people take communion via closed circuit television in their rooms, in the hotel rooms. And at that point, L. David Brown, who was our national director, later Bishop of Iowa, said, I think that is a violation of Lutheran principles in terms of how you define the community, the worshiping community. And so we didn't do it that way. We got everybody into Cobo Hall and had the Eucharistic service there. But it was an idea that was being kicked around
for a long time.
40 years ago.
And part of the question from my point of view is how do you define community here?
Exactly.
And technology has changed, I think, how we define community. In 64, yeah, maybe that seemed a little extreme to say closed circuit TV was still community. These days, I'm not so sure that electronically connected people aren't a community.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that. But it's different maybe taking a step toward Facebook Live. Okay, well, they're still able to communicate. It is live.
Mm,
Maybe that, but not pre-recorded and
not YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah, right.
But any of these things that we do, of course, do get recorded and get repeated, and so potentially someone, in Nigeria is having communion with us, and what does that mean, yeah.
From my perspective, I still would consider that part of the community if they're actually, directly involved in the service, in the same sense that you're involved in the service if you're sitting in the pew. I mean,
I would say
we sing all the songs and
I would say
everything. Don and
maybe.
I are always here doing those things,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm part of the service.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Part of
but I guess I think maybe they would be, but maybe they're not really too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and using it
Yeah.
for their own purposes somehow. So
I think when we're talking about a spiritual community, there has to be some ambiguity there. And I always think of Mr. Worston's comment that, and he was talking in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, community has been defined so loosely that we belong to the community of Kellogg's Raisin Bran users, or the so there's a possibility that you can define community so thinly that it kind of loses all meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if we're, I mean, again, I'm speaking for myself here, obviously, but it seems to me if you were to define community more broadly, electronically, say, and you were talking about a service, people would have to be participating in some ways. We're already in the Sunday service, though. We're very often, the readings are done from various people's homes.
mhm.
But so there is a back and forth there with
I
other
think you'd
people.
have to go back to the promises we make at baptism about what that community is, the mutuality there, and we make promises to be in community, not just in name only.
Mhm.
And if those criterion, to call them that, are met, then I think maybe we are an assembled community. But
Yeah, it's a tough issue, but
I think the line goes beyond that, though. If we just serve communion kind of virtually.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But it is 7:33, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. Well,
That
it was try to generate some discussion, but maybe a little too much. Let me think. I think, Brad, you were up.
Yeah.
On this.
Okay, if you'll beg my pardon, I will, or I beg your indulgence. I will read my prepared remarks.
Fine.
And you can stop me anytime you'd like. March 15th, the third Sunday in Lent, was the last time that the Immanuel Choir as a whole met to prepare hymns, service music, and choral repertoire for worship. That day, the choir sang Larry Fleming's arrangement of the African-American spiritual, Give Me Jesus. The hymn of the day was O Blessed Spring. As the pandemic spread and churches, schools, and businesses closed, many, including myself, settled in for what was sure to be a difficult time of isolation. And as I mentioned before, my thought was this is going to be hard, but hopefully we'll get back to normal in the next few weeks, the next month, maybe over the next couple of months. Now scientists have suggested that it will be well into 2021 until a potential vaccine will be widely available. Then people will have to receive it for its potency to have effect on us as a nation, as a world. Some have suggested that we might not get back to normal as we now know it until well into the fall of 2021. This outlook is so difficult to swallow. As a musician, and especially as a singer, how can this be possible? Back on March 15th, when we sang "O Blessed Spring," I really had no idea how those words would sing differently now. As congregations across the country moved to live streaming their worship liturgies over the internet, all of us, pastors, musicians, parishioners, were just grasping at whatever we could do to make the situation okay. It was not okay. It still is not okay. How could we be the church in this new world where the clear and peaceful tone of a soprano voice could potentially carry a tiny particle of virus into the air and infect someone with COVID-19? In stanza 2 of the hymn, "O Blessed Spring," it reads, "Through summer heat of youthful years, uncertain faith, rebellious tears, sustained by Christ's infusing rain, the boughs will shout for joy again." The bough here is the part of the tree that is damaged. Our uncertainty makes us less whole. We are rebellious by nature as sinners, yet through the trauma of youth and in the sadness of our isolation today, Jesus weeps with us, infusing grace into our lives, nurturing us with his own tears, which water the bending parts of our limp boughs. Eventually, we will shout for joy again. And isn't this the whole gospel message? In one hymn stanza, we are broken, and Jesus comes to us, whether we are healed or not. He is with us. He loves us. Jesus gives us hope. As the cantor, my primary calling is to attend to the song of the church. This is reinforced by the choir, which is the rehearsed portion of the gathered assembly. Along with the choir and the organ, we all lift our voices in song. But now we're separated. We're at home. Some people are home alone. How can we keep singing the Lord's song in this strange new land? Prior to the pandemic, some congregations were already recording their liturgies for posterity. Some of those same congregations began releasing recordings of hymns sung by their assemblies as part of their worship services online. This is different than playing a recording of, say, the King's College Choir. These were their voices, the voices of saints they knew and loved who now joined the heavenly feast, sounds of their organs, tangible connections to the recorded sounds. As we move toward a new sound and video system, we will have this ability to record and archive our worship services. Currently, the song continues virtually through rather simple means. Generally, one choir member leads the hymns and service music along with me, either at the piano or organ in the loft. Occasionally, choir members have met in small groups outdoors to pre-record hymns, sung mantras, and anthems. Recordings of anthems have also been made indoors, again with no more than 4 singers, and while adhering to CDC guidelines with regards to physical distancing and duration in the space. Many churches have opted to form virtual choirs. While the novelty of such choirs wore off quickly, many do continue to advocate for them. The problems with the very notion of virtual choirs are abundant. First and foremost, it is not true. By that, I mean it is not a true manner in which one creates music with the voice. It is what Mark Bangert has described as technological wizardry. If you listen to 5 different virtual choirs, chances are they all sound the same, virtually void of artistry. The very nature of the human voice, as it mingles and blends with other human voices, using one's ear, their vision, and their whole body, is completely absent. These Brady Bunch choirs are akin to robots void of emotion. Having said all of that, they do have their place. I'm not convinced they have a good place in a liturgy that is mostly presented and offered live. The worship team made the recommendation early on to maintain a live liturgy, where as many members of Immanuel could participate live as was possible. The other hangup with virtual choirs is the technical aspect of each choir member recording their part, then having someone take all the parts and line them up to form a group of voices. This work takes hours, and the payoff is sentimental at best. In May, members of the Association of Lutheran Church Musicians, along with the whole Pan-Lutheran body in North America, and even from some other countries, participated in a massive virtual hymn project for the day of Pentecost, singing the hymn, O Day Full of Grace. From Immanuel, Bill Bierman, Alicia Frazier, and myself participated. The requirements for us participants was tedious and took a great deal of time and coordination. Some suggested it probably wasn't worth the effort. The video, which was featured during worship on Pentecost, was inspiring, and the ALCM has commissioned another virtual hymn project for Christmas. I do intend to participate, and I hope all who are interested will do so as well. Future projects for the choir and congregation include a virtual Advent lessons and carol service, partially pre-recorded and partially live in a similar style as was our Easter Vigil liturgy. Marcia Smith has recommended an outdoor gathering of Immanuel members in the front courtyard sometime in December, where we can gather safely distanced from one another, and hopefully with the aid of a couple of fire pits, where we all may sing the songs and carols of the Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany season. It has also been important to have so many talented musicians from our congregation make their musical offerings in the form of pre-recorded videos. On occasion, those offerings have been live as well, and I'm grateful for the diversity of talent by which we are blessed at Immanuel. As a worshiping community, we now gather together virtually. This has been a source of comfort and continuity for our membership, but this virtual gathering should not be confused with the physical liturgical actions for which the assembly is responsible for when it physically gathers. Gordon Lathrop points out that our gatherings online, along with our personal study of scripture, devotion, prayer, and sacred song, should serve as reminders of the times when we were fully able to participate in the liturgical actions of public worship. When this pandemic is done with us, I hope that we will eagerly fill into the church, our house of prayer. I pray that our corporate confession will carry greater weight. May our voices resonate deeply into the perfectly ambient space as we cry out after the readings, thanks be to God. May our amens be proclaimed with renewed conviction, and may our voices rise continuously, singing a new song of great joy. No voice will be too small to share in the song of thanksgiving. On that day, whenever it may come, a great canticle will ring out into the streets. This is the feast of victory for our God. Alleluia. Worthy is Christ, the Lamb who was slain, whose blood set us free to be people of God. Power, riches, wisdom, and strength, and honor, blessing, and glory are his. Sing with all the people of God and join in the hymn of all creation. Blessing, honor, glory, and might be to God and the Lamb forever. Amen. For the Lamb who was slain has begun his reign. Alleluia. And then we will feast together as one family in unity through the communion of the Holy Spirit, with every saint around the throne of the altar, where portals of grace and beauty will spill over us like the rush of the Pentecostal breath of life. May it be so.
Amen.
And,
Amen.
So what do you have to say to that?
We've been driven into silence here for a second here.
yeah. Good job. Well,
That was
thought.
awesome.
Very well.
That line, this phrase, portals of grace and beauty. I got that from an Immanuel member who sent me a thank you note, and I thought it was such a beautiful phrase. Portals of grace and beauty.
Yeah.
That this person had experienced through the music at Immanuel.
Mhm.
Thought it was glorious. So I've shamelessly used it many times.
Good. Mm.
I don't know. Is there comments, discussion of what Brad's told us and everything?
I really enjoy your outdoor pre-recorded
Mhm.
singing.
Mhm.
It's kind of cool with, the trees out there and you could hear, traffic or people or whatever in the background, but it's just, it's not, I don't know, what do I say? Sanitized, it's
Yeah.
just out there and
Yeah.
it's nice. I enjoy those.
Mhm.
Good.
Well, we were fortunate enough to have actually been walking in the
Oh, yeah.
neighborhood one time when you had a quartet out there singing
Oh,
and listening to you
Mhm.
as we walked by. So I think your back was to the street. So
Yes.
I don't think you saw us. I think some of
Oh,
the
I
other
didn't.
folks did, but
Yeah. That's good.
there was one hymn we were recording, and the cicadas were just
oh,
roaring.
Oh, yeah.
And but it was okay.
mhm. And I think you're quite right about the technological problems of trying to put together a virtual performance. Those are huge. And yes, if you put enough effort into it, it can be done, but there's no way that we could put enough effort into it to do it on a regular basis, particularly as just Immanuel. That's impossible, I think. It's too bad the technology isn't quite as better than it is.
It's also true, though, that worship team and others that have participated in the discussion at Immanuel have said they have a strong preference for live gatherings on Zoom, which has many technical limitations, not as good as we could make it sound or look. And yet the fact that we can see each other, we can talk, that sense of not all being gathered at the same time is very important.
Yeah, thank goodness we have that technology now. This was
Yeah.
10, 20 years ago. We couldn't have done that. It would have been a lot,
Considering the steep learning curve on all of these things, I have to commend Pastor and Brad and everybody in the worship team for, I think, doing an absolutely magnificent job. I mean, we've had a few glitches now and then, but on the whole, it's been
very good. Yeah, I agree.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
I think maybe the first 3 or 4 or 5 times that I tried to convene a meeting on Zoom with staff or others, it was a complete fail. I mean,
the learning curve. Everyone is going through that. You're not the only one,
Yeah,
I'm in other groups that they talk about that.
I can feel your pain, Monty, because of course last spring I was teaching 4 sections of a laboratory course and all of a sudden had to convert that lab on 1 week's notice to Zoom. And it was not a pleasant experience, shall we say.
I think we got 2 more.
Yeah.
We got 10 minutes.
So Richard, do you want to say just a few words about 160 plus and anything along that line? I'm not sure you've been affected as much, but maybe.
Well, 160 plus is we're just involved in a couple publications projects, and you probably won't see those until after the holidays. I could say a little bit about the silent prayer, if you like.
That would be good.
We've been doing silent prayer at Immanuel probably for 150 years, but deliberately we've been doing it for about 10 years, where we set aside a time, either an hour on Saturdays once a month, or about 20 minutes on Sunday morning before the worship service. And occurred to a couple of us, particularly Gloria and me, that with the COVID situation, we could continue that time of silent prayer. And so starting about the time that we stopped having the in-house worship service, I started sending out a little reminder to people, and it's a very simple reminder. It usually includes a small section of the psalm, one of the psalms for the day. The middle part is a time of silence, which is very easy to send by email. And the third part is a very short, either meditation or prayer based upon either a significant figure or event in church history. For that, I've used a number of different calendars of saints. The Lutheran calendar, which some people are not aware even exists. The Catholic calendars, of which there are several different versions, and the Episcopal or Anglican calendar. And so between the three of those sources, I've found some very interesting people that we don't often pay much attention to. So anyway, that's, right now we're in the process of reevaluating. Right now that reminder memo on email goes out to about 60 people, and we're reevaluating just how we should be sending that out. Number one, not to bother people with extra emails, but on the other hand, to include people that might have been left out in our mailing list. So we're going to reevaluate all of that next week.
I like it myself. I mean, it's kind of grounds you before the actual service, you know, get you in that mindset.
Yeah, I have no idea exactly how many people are using it in any shape or form. My guess is that somewhere between 12 and 15 people probably use it on a weekly basis. I know there are at least a couple people that use it on a daily basis. I think it's been fun putting it together. And I think several people, I've had probably a dozen emails from people that tell me they appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it because it's like my time that I can, just before the service starts, maybe 10 minutes before the service, and I'm done rehearsing, I often go through that and pray those prayers and read those readings. So I find it very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Richard.
I would say that, you know, Don and I, of course, have been active as ushers a lot of times. And when you're ushering at the regular church, then you miss that silent prayer, you know, completely. And this one, you know, I think we've much more actively, and I know for sure Donna is much more actively than I on this, but, you know, it's been a real plus to do it that way.
Let me mention one thing real quickly. A couple of people have asked, where do you get the translations of the Psalms? Because it doesn't necessarily match what we see in our Sunday bulletin. I've been using, for the most part, the NIV, because I find that their translations of the Psalms are somewhat clearer and less cluttered, if that's the word, than the New Revised Standard. And recently I've been using of the NIV, which is the Catholic Bible for the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite good to get that one. I like that for a lot of things. Okay, I think, Marcia, do you want to say a few words as parish nurse? And whoops,
You're muted.
You're muted, Marcia.
Maybe that was better. Thank you, Ken, Minister Moderator. The parish nurse has had to, I now do most of my stuff on Zoom or phone, which is a real change from, you know, hands-on, sometimes physically touching another human being, and now I have to stay so far away. But I've adapted as best as I can, and call people periodically, especially those who I think maybe are more isolated or have, you know, issues going on. That and some people prefer texting, some emailing. And there are a few people who I do try to visit due to certain circumstances. But one of the main changes, concrete changes, is in the senior group, as Donna knows well. We used to meet twice a month in person over lunch, and then we'd have conversation or a program of some sort. Well, the group wanted to meet more often so as to keep connected. So we have weekly meetings now on Zoom. One or two people will have to phone in because they aren't able to do it on a computer or don't have a computer. But it's worked pretty well. And we also have incorporated the exercise via Zoom, just a seated exercise that Bonnie Pobji has led. So it's good, I think, for everyone that we can still have that regular time together. That's it in summary.
Well, I enjoy the senior program very much. I enjoy seeing
Good.
everybody every week. And it's a good group of people.
Is there's many seniors within the church that don't participate,
Mhm.
Richard Anderson being one of them. Sorry, Richard, I shouldn't have said your name out loud.
No, that's fine. I have good intentions, but I never quite make it there. I will promise you, Marcia, next Tuesday, I will be there.
Well, but Marcia will not be.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I
She's on
can't.
vacation
Going on,
this
no.
next week.
No, I have a doctor's appointment that day. I'll be, the
Okay.
following Tuesday, I will be there.
Oh, good. And that's the day we're going to recognize All Souls Day. So if you want to bring photos of a loved one that's passed on, or just bring some memories, we're going to honor them. So, yeah.
Ken could
but I-
also come to a meeting. I think he's been to
Yeah.
one meeting, but
Yeah.
Yeah, he's walked through the frame at least.
Well, I've
Yes,
walked through the
right.
frame a couple of times, all right. Middle.
Yeah, I would really like to know what the seniors who don't attend, if they would like to, if it were a different format or content, and I haven't got a sense for that. So if anyone has any clues to help me figure that out, let me know. Or, yeah,
Mhm.
I would really like input on that.
Yeah, that's a
So-
good question. I think we face the same question now. Just we'll finish with this because the forum, as you can see, we've got 7 lines in here, or 8 people tonight. That's not what we would normally have
that's
done.
because we have four speakers.
4 speakers, right?
Otherwise, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be
Otherwise,
this
we have the
many.
committee and 4 speakers, or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
that type of thing. I think. Okay, so let's see. Dave and Justin are the 2 folks here who, and Justin may have been dragged in here as
Kicking and screaming like
screaming.
dragged to the seniors on Tuesday too. We appreciate
So
it.
we do appreciate that. But the question I had for you is what's a good time for something like this? Or what's and one of the questions that we kicked around a little bit was whether or not we should try moving this to Sunday, late afternoon or something like that, and then making it just once a month or something on that order. Do you think that would attract more people when we had a program? I don't know. So I'm just throwing that out there, particularly for those of you who aren't on the committee. So that's David, Brad, Justin, Donna.
Yes.
Any thoughts or comments?
I don't have a solid formed thought. I think Sundays are usually good for people to associate with things of the church. It's a day of rest, and it could be a time just for the education of the forum. But I don't really know what works best for people.
Yeah.
I'm sort of generally available, and I'm kind of going through Zoom fatigue. So I don't know how others are feeling.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't mind it once I'm there, but getting there is like trying to climb up a steep hill for some reason.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm fully aware of Zoom fatigue. I have 6 meetings on Thursdays. And, so-
And he's retired.
and I'm retired, right?
You win.
Dave, did you have any comment on how would you feel about?
Well, yeah, I mean, that might work for me personally. I think that, like, if we were doing regular church, we would have like a Zoom coffee hour, and then we would have coffee hour, and then the adult forum after coffee hour. Now that's a lot of consecutive Zoom time if we use that format.
Yeah.
So maybe later in the afternoon is worth a try.
Mhm. Well, I just wanted to ask that question. I don't want to keep you too long. We're already
Maybe
over. I
sending
think.
an email out to people that used to come regularly when we had it at church, and others too, and just see if that works better Sunday afternoon, because some people can't come on Thursday night mainly because they have something else going on. So otherwise they might be here. So, just kind of get a sense of what other people are thinking too that aren't here. But I'm fine with Sunday afternoon.
Just a quick note about coffee hour for those of you who usually participate in that. I think it may look like I'm trying to get off of the internet as soon as possible every Sunday and not participate in coffee hour, but that's not what's actually happening. I can't participate in the sanctuary because with both computers, there will be a sound delay and kind of a thing around your head.
Yeah.
So that's why I sort of get off very quickly. It's not because I don't want to have coffee with you all.
Okay.
Well, I will say about coffee hour that I've found that to be a very enjoyable time. And in
Me
addition
too.
to which, I have talked to a whole bunch of folks in our congregation that I didn't normally talk to, because you tend to
You always sit with the same
you sit
people,
with
talk
the
to
same
the same
people at coffee hour.
Yeah.
And this coffee hour really breaks it up. I think it works better
Mhm.
than the regular coffee
Yeah.
hour in some respects.
Mhm.
In some respects, yeah.
Yeah.
Could I mention one thing?
Sure.
We lost one of the members of the forum recently, and Bernice Buzzolini was a member of the forum for
Many
I
years.
think 7 or 8 years, and we certainly will miss her.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us of that. And I do miss Bernice. She was a stalwart for this group.
Yeah.
Okay, next week we'll have some more of this with more other ministry teams, and I invite back those of you who talked tonight to hopefully come back and see what the others have to say. But I will be sending out maybe an email reminder or something. We'll try to figure out how to do that a little better too. But I want to thank everybody for their discussion, and I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. And unless there's something else from anyone, I think we can all say good night.
Okay, good night, thanks.
Good night.
Thanks again.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Good night.
Take care.